Welcome back, everyone, those who went out and those who were here. Hello again. So our next panel is on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and its impact on our daily life. I'm Diksha Datta, your moderator for this panel. I work with AsiaBerlin, and we focus on internationalization of startups across different sectors, and one of them is also artificial intelligence. To just set the context on artificial intelligence per se, I think there has been a study recently that AI will add 13 trillion US dollars to the global economy in the next decade. And there are a few factors to be kept in mind for that, which is how will we scale AI, how will we innovate in AI, and that's where the connection to Asia comes very significantly. And I must tell you that I am a fan of everybody on this panel, and you're going to learn a lot. So I'm super excited as an AI journalist to host this panel. And I would start with asking the speakers to introduce themselves for this particular panel. And we first start with Dr. Hans. So if you could, Dr. Hans, if you could give a one-line or two-line introduction about yourself to our online audience and offline audience.
Yes, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to do this. I've been working in AI for more than 30 years. I started to work in research in the United States, in the Bay Area, at Stanford Research. Then continued in Germany, where for many years I was one of the scientific directors at DFKI, first being the head of the Saarbrücken site. Then I built up the Berlin site. For the last 3 years, I lived in Beijing, where I started an AI company in Beijing and in Berlin, but this was not the first company I started. There were several ones before, and now let's see, now I'm spending most of the time in the company, but sometimes still working for DFKI, for the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence.
Thank you very much. Then we have Dr. Fei. She's also an AsiaBerlin ambassador. Thank you for coming to the panel, and I would like you to please introduce yourself as well.
Yes, thank you from my side. Also, thank you very much for inviting me to join this panel discussion. I'm Fei Xu. I'm now Global Head of Artificial Intelligence at SAP. My mission is driving enterprise AI at SAP in order to help other companies in our ecosystem to confirm and also conduct intelligent transformation. And before I joined SAP, I have had established the first artificial intelligence lab at Lenovo and help successful intelligent transformation of Lenovo, respect to intelligent devices and also intelligent process. And I have worked in artificial intelligence also for many years. Before I joined Lenovo, I had worked at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence for almost 19 years. And now I'm looking forward to our discussions and insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Ludwig, welcome to the panel.
Yeah, thank you also very much for inviting me. I'm, you can say, an European Asian manager, so I lived the last years in Vietnam, in Shanghai, in China, and in Germany, and I could follow how the developments are in facility management, integrated facility management. So I saw how artificial intelligence is used there, how data is collected and what can be done with the data, to see how smart city development can be done. Very impressive developments in the last time. And yeah, after managing the biggest European company in Vietnam in this field, I started my own company. It developed also quite fast, and I see how many people ask now for exactly these smart solutions for yeah, artificial intelligence. And I also very happy to do some bridges between Asia and Germany, since I'm the representative of BVMW, the big association for German small and medium-sized companies. And of course, we are always keen to connect and to help the companies to bring together this knowledge and to develop in this sector as well.
Wow, so as you can see, a very diverse panel so far. And we also have two speakers joining us remotely. So we'll start with Siddharth. Siddharth, we are all introducing ourselves, doing it a little differently for this panel. So would love your introduction as well.
Sure. Thank you, Diksha. Thank you so much to AsiaBerlin Summit guys for arranging such a beautiful, extraordinary summit, global summit. I'm really thankful to everyone, the government, the people who have arranged this, and thank you for everything that you have provided us, a lot of opportunities. My name is Siddharth. I'm the founder of Powerly AI. We believe in giving more powers to AI. What we are building is a sustainable HR technology platform that helps companies bring in digital transformation. So what we believe is transforming the HR function, which was traditionally earlier was most of a kind of a support function, but right now it's more getting into business, and HR is more connected to business right now. So we want to transform that function. We use natural language processing and voice technologies to connect talent and businesses and solving some of the critical challenges in human resources department globally. We are based out of India in Mumbai, and we have a very strong connection to Germany, especially to Hamburg and Berlin both. I was for 1 year in Hamburg. I was a part of a sustainability program by BMZ. It was called International Sustainability Academy. So we did research about for almost 1 year into sustainability. How do we include sustainability into the core functions of business as well as technology? So we believe in sustainability and bringing this particular concept into the core functions of businesses and in our own, in our own startup. And yeah, so I am basically from India, and I think, looking forward to participate in this summit, and that's it.
Yeah, thank you. We are also looking forward to hear your stories about AI innovation in India. And Nav,
Sure.
Nav is also an AsiaBerlin ambassador, so very proud to have two AsiaBerlin ambassadors on this panel. We would love if you introduce yourself.
Hi, Diksha. First
Hi.
of all, after listening to all the other panelists, I feel I should go back and sit in audience because I'm the odd one out here. I'm not a tech expert. My understanding of AI is as elemental as that it works like neural networks. They learn on their own, and that's my understanding of AI. And I'm here on this panel, and otherwise my curiosity about AI is my kind of quest to learn about AI is more from curiosity perspective, and how does it kind of interacts with humans and how it can shape humanity. I run a design consultancy called IDActu in Singapore, and it's around 9:30 p.m. here, 9:41 p.m. here, just to give you a perspective of time difference. And also, Diksha, I would like to know how many people are sitting in the audience there, just to get a sense.
Okay, these are the questions. So how many of us are here? We are, I think, around, we are 150.
And no.
See, they are laughing. You can already hear 150 laughter.
Actually, I saw people giving you thumbs up
Okay.
giving such
No,
a beautiful...
we are under 20 because we've been having a long day, and yeah, and also, so yeah, we are under 20, jokes apart. So, okay, let's dive into the world of AI and AI innovation. So, as I started my panel with talking about how much AI, the adoption of AI is going to add to the global economy, and it's 13 trillion US dollars, and these are the numbers that reports in McKinsey publish. but we really don't know what's happening on ground. And my first question is related to innovation in AI. And the broad view that we have right now is that most of the innovation that's happening in AI is in US or China, and those are pretty much the front runners when it comes to AI innovation. And then there is Europe, which is actually receiving a lot of government support when it comes to AI innovation. So to get a macro view, I would like to start with Dr. Hans, actually, that because you specifically specialize in this, and when we talk about AI innovation, why do we say that give us some examples where we say that Asia is leading and the US is leading and Europe needs to catch up, and why is that? It's a very broad question, I know, I'm sorry.
It's a very broad question, and it will take a few sentences, because it has a long history. You may know that most of, or many of the algorithms in AI, of the methods with neural networks, also in the area of autonomous driving, in language technology, originally came from Europe. And many of the people, the Turing Award winners, for instance, in AI are Europeans. So I would say the majority of very basic insights and methods came from Europe, but there's a long, long history. Again and again, the United States really managed to bring out, to cash in and get the commercial success on things, whether they started in the US or elsewhere, and whoever did it. So there are two questions. One is, where do the basic ideas come from? And there, I think Europe is doing quite well. But in commercialization, the United States was always much, much better. That's a very old traditional thing. That started with the internet, with GPS, all these things. So it's a long history. Machine translation, for instance, was started from Europe pretty much, and so on. So lots of other things. Autonomous driving, Sebastian Truhen from Germany, and so on. So United States does it because they have two methods that now we come to who learned from whom. Yeah, there are two methods. One is you don't stop funding after basic research is over, but you have an agency like DARPA that funds things until you can use them. And that makes it possible to hop over to startups, successful startups, and then you get startup funding. Why? Because there are things that are ready to use and ready for commercial success, and there's enough startup money. So these two things were missing in Europe, the last mile, and then the startup money. So now China has realized this very, very well, and immediately played the same game, made sure that you get, that you bring your applications all the way until they are ready for using, and to have enough money. Actually, they overdid the startup money. They almost got too much. So you saw that there were more companies funded than really had good ideas for a while. So, and Europe is trying to, but we can come back to that later. I don't want to tell the whole story now. Europe is trying very much to overturn without catching up. Yeah? So trying to overturn already, and trying to have a better AI in the sense of more ethical, in a different way, a different direction. And in one direction, Europe will be very successful, and I guess in enterprise AI, because that is the weak spot in China, and it's also not very strong in the United States compared. So most of the United States and China AI is in consumer electronics, is in internet, in e-commerce, in the big hyperscalers. And there, of course, Europe has to learn a whole lot. China already did, yeah, but when it comes to enterprise AI, I guess Europe has to offer something, yeah, that will be seen in the future. So I stop at that point, but I think we will come back on different issues to these differences, because they are really important to understand. Also, the role of the government, yeah, in those three countries is completely different.
Okay. Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. to leave me at, because that brings me directly to Dr. Fay, because that's where the role of big corporates like SAP comes into picture. When we say that, okay, enterprise AI is where Europe is actually going to be the front runner. So my question to you is that SAP is very deep into enterprise AI. And first of all, how significant is this vertical in the company? And secondly, what does it take to actually build a unique enterprise AI solution?
Thank you so much. Let me start with what can AI contribute to international companies, like companies. Actually, I consider AI plays 3 important roles. One is AI can help every company to upgrade their products, for example, software functions or hardware attractivities, and also create new solutions. The second point is with machine learning and a combination of machine learning and knowledge, AI solutions will improve the process, enterprise processes. For example, supply chain management. For a manufacturing company, almost 60–70% of the cash flow was eaten up by supply chain management, right? If you can optimize 1%, you can save a lot of money. And also customer relationship management. With sentiment analytics, you can monitor the opinions and the market about your products and your services, and also logistic network optimization. All these enterprise AI solutions will contribute, improve the enterprise processes. And the third thing is also, if a company can use AI, develop AI technologies, enable AI technologies to improve the products, improve the process, this company will win the visibility on the market and also have much more better marketing than only do advertisement, right? Therefore, product services upgrades and the improvement of processes and improve wide AI, the promotion and marketing. If we look at enterprise AI, look at SAP, actually I think, of course, AI will improve our enterprise solutions, our ERP system, HANA, S4HANA, we have AI solution, machine learning solution embedded already. On the other hand, actually SAP, we actually have the mission use our intelligent solutions to empower all the companies in our ecosystem, make them intelligent, and we make the process more efficient. This is our mission, right? And if we look at the enterprise AI solution in comparison to the, I call general purpose, the narrow AI, like face recognition, object recognition, voice solution, they are actually AI solutions which were very popular in the past years and also very narrow and perception driven. But if we want to make really very good enterprise AI solutions, this must be precise, right? Also combined with company knowledges, verticals, right? If we want to have supply chain management for manufacturing companies, we have to consider also how the hardware and software will be combined to each other. If you use computer vision technology in the manufacturing, in the shop floor, the hardware software solution have to combine in order, if you want to see this monitor, inspect the product lines, the solution will catch up with the speed, right? And also in the right place to monitor the product's production. Therefore, it's much more complex than only narrow AI solutions. This SAP, I think also, like Hans mentioned, this is why European companies, Industry 4.0, because we are very good in complex solutions, monitor complex processes. I think in this area, we have the chance to win.
Okay, that's indeed something that is also, I think, for everybody who's listening to this, because this panel is very diverse and we are very lucky to have a panel where we have a corporate, where we have a young startup, and where we have Ludwig, who works closely with the SMEs, and we have Nav to give us the human perspective, and of course your knowledge about everything that's happening in the Asian markets and the research side. So that brings me to you, Ludwig, in terms of how do you feel, where is the opportunity for small and medium enterprises to look at AI solutions or adoption of AI?
Yeah, thank you. There are actually many opportunities, of course, and they have to be used because it's very crucial to develop in this direction, since that is a future. There's, in my opinion, no way back. But one has to be really prepared. It's not just about doing something with AI. It's really about thinking what exactly is a problem I have and where do I want to use it for, the AI. So that is very important to be prepared for this, to also train and make sure that your staff can do it, because there are many German SMEs. Was a survey also made by BVMW, the Association for Small and Medium-Sized Businesses, and that was showing that actually there are not so many companies in the small fields. They really have a better, that it really pays off, and that depends on being really good prepared by it for this development.
Okay, so that's also indeed a very important gap to fill. And so that we have corporates, SMEs, and now, Siddharth, I want to ask about, okay, we spoke about China, we spoke about US, and we spoke about adoption of AI, but what about India in terms of AI innovation? And you are a startup there, and you started up an AI company, and how competitive is it to have an AI startup in India? And give us some numbers in terms of how the AI innovation and startup industry in this space is booming, or what's happening there.
Yeah, so if I give you some rough numbers about how many AI startups are there in India, it's almost 2,000 plus AI startups. And of course, yes, it is really crowded. Now, everyone is jumping into AI because AI has become a buzzword. So globally, there are a lot of investments coming in, and everyone is actually starting an AI company, and they are actually creating domains like www.abc.io or maybe .ai, just to attract a lot of attention across. Wherever you see, you will find, what are you doing? I'm building an AI company, and it's not that easy. But it's easy to say that you are building an AI company, but there are a lot of efforts in terms of talent, in terms of capital, in terms of research that is required behind this particular thing, and it takes a lot of time to build a hardcore AI startup. Like, we have a lot of developments in terms of in healthcare. Per se, in healthcare, there are a lot of companies who are, I'll give you some examples in terms of where the innovations are coming up. Mainly the healthcare sector, where you have startups who are predicting early cancer detections, say, or maybe early pregnancy, or something like the early primary healthcare, right? So there's a lot of traction which is being built up in the healthcare sector, as well as in the sector like us, where we are working in the human resources or people management sector. So, for example, we are building an AI application for human resources departments in enterprises. So it's a technology platform for transforming the HR function in enterprises. So there are a lot of developments happening across India. So the focus is more on predictions. Healthcare is one sector, and then another sector is called like fashion and e-commerce, where we have like image recognition, and there are a lot of stuff like predicting your buying behavior and what you can buy more, e-commerce space. And then you have automotive sectors, where the application is predicting like the maintenance, like how frequently the machine is going to be repairable, like how frequently you need machines to be repaired, So predicting the maintenance part of machines and all that. So there are different innovations happening across. I gave you a few examples. And if you look at the overall AI market, like you mentioned about a few $1 trillion worldwide. Now in India, you can say that almost $1.35 billion plus like opportunities only in AI. But if I talk about specifically about starting an AI company and being successful, the only thing that is required in this whole game is data, right? And without data, the prediction algorithms or your model doesn't work. Because right now, if I say that I am doing something and I want to predict something, then I need to have historical data as well as the current data structures and architecture. On the basis of that, I can predict, but nobody can guarantee whether the prediction is accurate or not. We can wait for another 3 to 5 years to see whether those historical data has worked or not. That's too difficult, and we need a lot of backend research. So if you talk about R&D, there are institutes like Indian Institute of Technology, and there are a lot of research institutes which have come up to do a lot of research in AI, but a long way to go. I mean, a long way to go.
Okay. I think it's a long way to go for all of us and not just India. But I personally feel that AI is touching in our lives in ways that we don't even know that it's touching our lives, and tracking all the data about when we are sleeping, when we are walking, when we are, or all the apps that we are using in today's life. And Dr. Huggins, there's a question that actually is something that I got from the audience in Twitter when we tweeted about this panel, is that how AI, which everybody talks about, that it can solve the world's biggest problems about global recession or pandemic and everything, and also our panel is about how it's affecting daily lives. So how do you think AI can actually solve these problems, the biggest problems in the world today?
So I don't think that AI by itself will solve these problems, but true, AI will be in almost every aspect of our life and our work, for sure. And it will be used for solving them. You mentioned pandemics. Yeah? So far, why don't we have more chances to have machine learning help us to understand the epidemiology of the virus? It is mainly because societies are too reluctant to gather the data for several reasons. Yeah? It is possible. It is possible. We could have observed already the essential workers, yeah, the system-relevant companies, and compared them to the ones that had the lockdown. We could have followed and tracked at least huge samples. But many societies, especially European, Western societies, are very reluctant to getting all these data. Here we are back to the data problem. But it will happen, of course, eventually. But right now, I would say there are two stumbling blocks. One stumbling block comes from inside AI, and this is we have to move from narrow to broad AI, meaning that not just an end-to-end learning, input-output, and we learned on one, but we have to combine this powerful machine learning with knowledge, that as we have it in knowledge graphs, huge amounts of corporate, of social knowledge, of human knowledge. So that is but then I would say this is moving on, yeah, because in the labs people are working on hybrid cognitive systems. But what is right now the biggest stumbling block is the inertia of society. It is simply that in the Western society, we have, in comparison to Asian societies, a very polarized society. One half trying, even do not want to give up cash. They want to pay with cash. Yeah? They want to, and they are very much scared of leaving their data and having their data gathered. Yeah? And the other half, yeah, the other half are the politicians who say, oh, we let now SAP and German Telecom to do a tracing app only if we make sure that only very few people use them, because we make it completely voluntary. So that's the, so then they do, and this is the same way. I'm using this example only, but there are 1,000 other examples in our society. If you look at digitization in the schools, in the public administration. So China, for instance, would do procurement. One way they further AI is procurement. So all these, for instance, all these cameras all over the country that measure whether drivers violate speed, and that observe probably much, much more, yeah, whether we like it or not. But this is kind of a procurement, or DARPA is doing procurement. Whereas in the public administrations in Germany and in Europe, they are still fighting whether everybody of the employees should have their own PC and a laptop, and whether there could be any dangers in those. So we are still in a different world. So, and I think in Europe, that's why I say enterprise AI has a chance, because enterprise is driven by monetary interests, and enterprises will move to using AI eventually, yeah, because it's necessary for survival. But in the rest of society, yeah, in the health system, in the educational system, in the public system, I guess, with the exception of a few countries like Estonia and Finland that are a little bit more advanced, we are probably have to travel, see that COVID-19 regulations are stopped, the quarantine, and then we can travel to China and see how AI really enters daily life. Yeah? So we will rather see it in California and in China than in Europe.
So is it safe to say that access to data is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to innovation in AI in Europe, per se?
It's not only access to data, it's getting the data. It's getting the data, because right now legislation is pretty much against curbs, really. It's still, I mean, it has become better. There are huge progress. We don't want to blame the politicians now for everything, or the population. There's huge progress already made. But still, it is too slow. It is by far not enough gathering of data. I mean, compared, for instance, just between Germany and Estonia. Yeah, I don't want to even mention it, because the tears are rolling over my cheeks, if I would, because lots of things in public administration that are possible in other countries. And let's face it, I mean, China has embraced AI not only by lip service, but they are bringing it into the schools, into the primary schools. They are equipping the public services. They are giving huge contracts. And so in that end, probably this development that you mentioned, that AI will end up in people's lives, will eventually also happen in Europe. But we cannot bank on that it will happen at the same time here. Maybe much later.
Yeah, fair.
Unless we speed up very fast.
Yeah, fair to say that. So Nav, you had a lot of interesting perspectives in terms of what is the relationship of human beings with AI and humans with AI, and how we look at machines, and how has it changed over the years, considering it's coming into our daily lives. So take us through that journey of human-machine relationship and how it's impacting our daily lives.
Yeah, thanks, Diksha. Before that, I would like to touch on what Dr. Hans was saying just now and what he said earlier. I just want to share a very interesting, one-liner I had heard somewhere. They say, like, in AI or in technology, US innovates, Europe regulates, and China executes. So I think all three have to come together somewhere, because this is a very lopsided equation that we are in like three different ages or eras regarding to one technology. And for something like AI, I think this kind of symbiosis has to happen sooner than later. So yeah, I think, as I said earlier, I'm no expert in AI. My interest is purely out of curiosity, and I was kind of reflecting on a bit, and to kind of the topic was impact of AI on our daily lives, and I thought, like, first of all, to even understand the impact, we need to understand what it means to be human. Number one. Number two, we need to understand our relationship with technology in general, and maybe AI in particular. and then understand the difference between machine and human. Only then we'll be able to have some kind of ability on how we can look beyond this frenzy of AI into how it will impact our lives. So maybe I'll touch on each point very quickly. So what it means to be human, and this reflection kind of led me to think of three things. There are three things that define human beings. Number one, that we are driven by this instinct of survival. And this instinct of survival gives us this impulse to procreate and hunger to survive. And the emotion associated with it is fear. Second instinct is sustaining. And because once we have given birth to somebody we have procreated, we give them love and nurture them and to kind of sustain them and make them grow. So the second emotion that is associated with being human is emotion of love and empathy. And third, a very defining emotion, which I think I took this from Harari, is imagination. And imagination gives rise to, in a way, this impulse to collaborate and co-create and create. And the emotion associated with is meaning and purpose. So I think the crux of this is survival, sustaining, and imagination. We are still defined by these emotions of fear, love, and kind of meaning and purpose. So I think if we see human beings like this, which is we are very much emotion driven, and of course, like you can say that even algorithms can also kind of code emotions. I'm not sure when that will happen, but for the moment, we are very much emotion driven, whereas AI or technology is very task driven. So at this point in time, we need to understand how technology has shaped our world so far. So starting from when Homo sapiens, or even before that, like Neanderthal, we started to live on this planet, we were using some kind of technology, whether it to chisel a stone and make a wheel out of it, and then we went into the industrial age, and then so on and so forth. Then information technology came. But all this while, what we were doing with technology was augmenting our physical being, the muscle power. I think the first time I think AI has started to reach that inflection point, perhaps it has still not, where we are augmenting intelligence. And this is a very, very different ball game, and that's what scares me. And I'm sure like all of you on the panel have views on this as well. So I think if we are able to understand that, number one, we are different from machines. And number two, that we are in a very different era, or at the cusp of an era, where the muscle power will be kind of not just augmented by machine, but our brain power will be augmented by machine. So in this era, now we have to see how will it impact our daily lives. And I would like to start with saying that before the era of advent of era of AI, which has started to happen, in many ways, we are still controlled by when I sit in a taxi and I tell my taxi driver, take a road from here because this Google map has fed it wrong. No, he follows what Google map tells him. So we are already driven by algorithms. And same goes for doctors and so on and so forth. But I think it may happen more where in the era so far, people have been the scarce resources. So when we work more, we are more productive and we get paid more. But in times to come, I feel jobs will become scarce resource, because jobs will be, whether it is enterprise AI or other kind of AI, jobs will become a scarce resource. And that's a very different, fundamentally different problem to solve. And this will, when we don't have anything to do, and I said we are defined by three things, three emotions, fear, empathy, and meaning, and we derive this meaning from relationships, from what we do, and we have nothing to do. The problem is this, cuckoo, you have problem of healthcare pandemic, not AI pandemic. So in this case, when we move away from these lack of jobs to kind of, and the implications will be great, like in the form of like, I don't know, like digital dictatorships or a healthcare problem or people getting like mad. So I feel like if we start to see things from this perspective, then we need to start to ask ourselves right questions. So I think what Europe is doing, in a way, I feel that is in a way right thing to do. If we can set these kind of goals for ourselves, if we can set right kind of agendas for us and not go in this frenzy. But I'm not sure how if China keeps on moving fast and the rest of the world kind of keeps on looking at regulations and ethics. So I think this is a very big question. Perhaps, I don't know, Dr. Hans or other learned panelists may have more views on that. But for me, it is on one side, it is the utopia, and other side is the dystopia. But I think the real world challenges will be next 20 to 30 to 40 years will be around jobs and mental health and stuff like that. That's how I see AI or advent of AI or lack thereof will impact our lives.
Yes, that was indeed a very different and much needed perspective for that panel. So whatever you said in the beginning of the panel, you should take back your words because we needed this. And coming back to...
By the way, I was telling already, telling Diksha, am I the right person for the panel? Shall I speak or not? I was very, so I'm still the same. I don't know whether I'm the right person for this panel.
No, I'm very glad you are here. And we all are very glad, and I can speak on behalf of everyone here. Yes, I can see a lot of thumbs up. And talking about, again, Europe and Europe moving ahead. And actually, there's a lot of work that has happened by different players in the ecosystem when it comes to adoption of AI, and one of the strong pillars has also been the government's role in adoption of AI, and the European Commission actually identified it as one of the strategic areas, and there has also been a 700 million EU funding specifically for innovation in AI. And my question is for both Ludwig and Dr. Hans, that please tell us that what actually happens on ground when we see such big numbers and reports on AI being as one of the most strategic pillars of the government when it comes to innovation. So give us some examples of how has it worked on ground, yeah.
Yeah, so those are very, very encouraging signs, both the announcements of the German government to fund AI at a stronger scale, and then immediately now following and at a much larger scale, even also, or maybe not much larger, but it's of course Europe is bigger than Germany on a bigger scale together with our neighbors, this European push. And it will have lots of very good outcome, and it's already forming. Fortunately, it goes probably in a good direction because it's not only some bureaucrats in Brussels who will select the topics, but in the meantime, there is huge associations like Claire and Alice. Those are two women names, but at the same time, they are the names of big AI associations all over Europe, yeah, combining all over Europe. And they are already working together with the European Commission in finding the right spots to do things. So that will make, that will have a big impact. There's a slight grain of salt though, and again, it connects to what I said earlier. There's a tendency to think that we do things better in the ethical sense without doing them well in the technical sense. So I guess first we have to do things very well on the technical sense and have powerful enough AI, because powerless AI, I mean, even powerful AI does not kill people immediately right now. Yeah, it can be made, but powerless AI will be completely harmless. It will only cost money. So what we need to do is we need to we need to be able to be abreast on a par at the same as our competitors and collaborators. We have not talked about collaboration enough yet, only about competition, about our competitors in Asia and in the United States. But in order to give the world more transparent, more reliable, more responsible AI, we need to be as good in performance as the best AI, because otherwise you know what the world will do. It will take the more powerful AI and not the ethically better AI. So this is really, we have to be very, very careful that we do not postpone things too much and say, okay, let the other people do the powerful bad AI. We wait a little bit and plan the good AI, yeah? And then we come and try to sell the ethical, the supreme AI to the world. It may be too late by then. So we need to make, that was my grain of salt also. But yes, it is very important that we get these AI initiatives of the governments, but on the other hand, we should not try to over-regulate without knowing, without getting a better experience on what the real dangers will be, not the dangers that sociology students make up in their seminars, yeah? Or people in the humanities departments now are dreaming of in their nightmares or so. But the real dangers are very hard to foresee. If in the beginning of the automobile or of the of electricity, we would have foreseen all the real dangers and made already all the legislation, it would have been completely wrong. Yeah, and every premature regulation actually is hindering progress and is only disturbing people. So we should be very careful. We should have mechanisms for monitoring and letting our ethical concerns and our activities march on with the technical progress and have feedback loops always from the practice and have people observing all these things instead of having 1,000 committees and already drawing up regulations for something that does not exist yet.
Okay, and how would what would you add to this, Ludwig, when you're working with small and medium-sized companies or other areas of your daily life?
At first, I want to add that you get an idea. So there are really many programs, funding programs to foster technology, research and development. So there are at the EU aid, in especially this, but even more, slightly different. But they can be, they help these companies. But nevertheless, it is like that. There are still just a third of the companies, of the small and medium-sized companies, they really apply AI technologies just in some projects. And around 6% in all businesses and in all business areas, I mean. And so there's still a lot to do and to develop in this field in Germany.
We are getting there, and we will get there. And we spoke about collaboration, and you're right that we should speak more about collaboration, also because we are all about collaboration at AsiaBerlin. And I think Faye also has some very important perspective in terms of how Asia and Europe can really collaborate and learn from each other when it comes to innovation in AI. And what do you think are the 2-3 areas where both parts of the world can actually learn from each other?
Yeah, I think the summarization about innovation, regulation, execution give us the framework already. And I think from the collaboration of point of view, on the one hand, in the research and I think Asian country, because I stayed also in the last 3 years in Beijing and established the first artificial intelligence lab at Lenovo. 80% of my staff are Chinese students and also engineers, researchers. I think what Asia in particular, I think our Chinese high talent, they can learn from European university and the research community, the open mind, the exchange. Yeah? Because if you look at the Chinese university, most of the students are still Chinese. If you look at the European or US, it's a very international diversity. I think diversity and international exchange will really help the innovation and come up with very good ideas. I think on the one hand, I think Asian country, in particular China, is so advanced with AI. They are very lucky because of the open source community. They can build their innovation on top of open source, which are mostly developed by Western countries, in US and also European country. On the other hand, I think also European countries can also learn from the execution of excellence in China, and also really mean seriously with embrace artificial intelligence. Of course, I think we are very advanced with the ethics, right? It's very good. On the other hand, I think perhaps we should not be dominated by the fear and scare. Fear and scare will give us the barrier to involve our society, right? Actually, we are part of the not only the innovation, also the evolution of the human society, and artificial intelligence will be part of the evolution of our human society. If, as Hans also mentioned, if we are too scared of the risks, perhaps we cannot catch up the general trend of the evolution of our human society. We should learn from, be more embrace, have more courage. This is the second point. On the other hand, I think also in the smart manufacturing, I think Asia country and European country in particular, also Germany and China can work very closely, because in car industry there are a lot of companies, and also we have a lot of collaborations, and there are many areas we can the Asian and the European country can learn from each other. And also a lot of companies are globally, right? They have we have divisions, teams in Europe and teams also in Asia. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you come to AsiaBerlin, because this is the ground where you actually connect Asia to Europe. And we don't have enough time, but there are two things that I feel are very important to cover. And one of them is when we speak about enterprise AI or AI solutions, and we see that everybody wants to invest in AI, there are AI startups, and how do you actually measure the return on investment when it comes to adoption of AI? Like, how is it actually helping in terms of whether it's saving money or whether, you know, in customers? So what are the 3-4 parameters, Faye, you would say that are that help us in calculating ROI on AI adoption?
Now I want to share with you, actually we can classify the enterprise AI market in 3 categories. One category is you apply and integrate AI technology in existing AI applications, like for example at SAP we have HANA, S4HANA Enterprise Solutions, and we integrate AI solutions in order to make the process more intelligent, integrate monitoring, optimization. This is one category. Embed AI into existing portfolio. This is one thing. Another category is many hyperscaler like Google, Microsoft. They provide platforms like Azure and also Google platforms for AutoML. You can train and build your own solutions on top of these platforms. The third category is use AI in existing platform like Oracle database. You make the database more virtually, more efficient. Now these 3 different categories have different return of investment. If you will look at the first category, if you embedded your AI solutions into existing portfolio, for example, if we embed the chatbot technology into human-machine interaction, it means we make the process more efficient and the usage of our solutions more natural, and make the human the user satisfaction rate more better. And otherwise, also if we use optimization of business process, we will make it more efficient. And if we optimize supply chain management, it means we will lead to the cost saving. These are the return of investment. On the other hand, for Google companies like Google or platform company, they provide this kind of platform on the one hand sometimes for free. This gives this visibility and also like this has a promotion. On the other hand, they use often premiums, right? The traffic, the consumption will bring them the return of investment. And for the third category, of course, the virtualization of the platform, we make the costs more efficient. This is all the return of investment for enterprise AI.
You want to say something?
Yes, I want to say this is the very technically solid way of estimating, which I think we need, yeah, which I think we need. But we shouldn't forget, in addition, maybe one type of AI applications that interrupt so much that we cannot really measure before. So if at the beginning, let's say long before AI, yeah, if in the beginning people, when Excel, Microsoft Excel came first, yeah, spreadsheet, if you would have asked, you can only introduce it in a company if they exactly can tell you how much they save by putting it in, yeah? Impossible, yeah? Or sometimes we are also mistaken. For instance, machine translation. Machine translation translates more now than all human translators in the world combined, by far, by several orders of magnitude. And still, translating business thrives, grows by 11% a year. One of the largest, translation, human translation business. Why? Because, yeah, there are certain types of translation that cannot be fully automated, that need human for, so it's very, very, I want to warn and say some of the, or chatbots, yeah, chatbots at home, they will have interruptions that cannot even be measured, yeah, if you are able to talk to almost everything around, if the children can already talk to the furniture and say, what are you for? And so, yeah, so there will be interruptions in our society that will be so big that before you cannot, it's, yeah, it's like before the iPhone or before the PC, yeah? Nobody could say in dollars how much it. So I think for the individual AI techniques, what Fiyu said is exactly the method probably that need to be applied, but we should be careful. I think the most interruptive innovations by AI will be of a type where you are not able to calculate exactly the savings before or the impact on society.
Yeah, I'm just the messenger of questions which come from people, including investors. So, and coming to Siddharth, who has to definitely answer these questions for his potential investors or investors, and is a startup. So how do you measure ROI on AI for your customers?
So there are two things here. One is the impact, and the second is the financial ROI. Now, for example, what investors or customers are looking at is how well you can predict certain things. For example, if I take my example, our startup, which is basically using natural language processing and voice speech recognition technology to predict how good is this employee for this organization, okay, and what is the behavior of an employee, and which we find out from voice. So at this point of time, what is happening is the AI model is predicting at a certain level because we have less amount of data. Now, when there is an enterprise which is expecting a ready solution right now, and if I look at my startup right now, we are in the scale of 1 to 10, I am at, say, maybe at 3. Because to predict 100% or maybe 70%, good prediction, it requires some amount of historical data being applied on real users and real, customers. I may take another 6 months to collect those data and then increase my prediction percentages. So right now I can say I can predict 30 to 40%. Yes, 30% is predictable, but a customer wants that, okay, I want maybe a 70 to 75% prediction. If you look at me, I go back and see, let's see the data. Are these data sustainable or not? I mean, again, I will go back and focus on two things. One is data, playing around with data, which is very important to predict something which a customer wants, because a customer wants to save his time and money and automate certain things, certain repetitive tasks, but at the same time, he wants a prediction in a right manner, and it should be in a sustainable manner. Now, I mean, I'll give an example. A couple of years back, Amazon had their own recruitment model, okay, and they stopped that model because the model itself predicted and selected a lot of white people. Okay, they say they selected a lot of white people, and that there was a bias in the system. So there was a problem. Then Amazon stopped it. Now the problem here is that the system had only white people data. They didn't have a similar set of percentages of black people data, or maybe from other communities. So when we talk about data, it has to be sustainable in a way that it has to be diverse from different societies, cultures, and then you apply those data on your model and the model predicts. So even before I measure ROI or a customer measures ROI, I have to really work on the sustainability of data collection and its application, because I don't want my system to be biased towards certain categories of people or towards certain categories of some products or services. I mean, so the biasness is everywhere. If we talk about e-commerce or fashion or medical or HR like us, everywhere it is there. So, I mean, as I rightly said, that there is one thing that is very important is the impact. Is it really saving the time of a customer? I mean, traditionally, I'll give one example that earlier people did a lot of phone calls to talk to talent candidates during recruitment processes. Right now, we brought a chatbot model, a conversational AI platform where the chatbot actually saves a lot of time in terms of communication, engagement, answers questions, and we get voice recordings in advance. So we analyze those voice recordings and can tell an employer, a company that, look, these are the 10 people who fits this particular job, or these are the 10 people whose behavior is in a certain manner. So we are doing a certain level of predictions. So, and those predictions are based on certain amount of data. So, I mean, the ROI is actually based upon the data you collect, the kind of data you collect. Now, right now, if you have more data, the model is more accurate and predictable. And of course, the customer is happy. Yeah. And what investors are looking at is basically the kind of tech talent you have. I mean, it's specific to India. We have good people who are good, smart in engineering and mathematics, statistics, which are required for the machine learning models, right? You need to be thorough with statistics, right? So the investors are look at, okay, you have a tech talent, you have a tech co-founder or not, you have a good team. Then they see that, okay, how much data you have. Have you collected enough data so that this model works? This model predicts something accurately? Because the level of the percentages of prediction vary. So they see, okay, how much data you have worked on. What is the historical data? Tell us something about that. Yeah. And then they see the architecture. So, I mean, what kind of architecture you have built? Is it scalable or not? In which cloud platform you are using? I mean, what is the cloud platform that you are using? And what is the data architecture model that you have, which should be scalable? Now, today I have 100 numbers. Tomorrow I may have 1 million numbers. So is the system capable enough to, sustain that particular amount of data? So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, so the ROI is based on these different parameters and different scenarios. And over a period of time, actually the customer realizes that what they are investing and what is the return basically. I mean, it's very difficult at this point of time to tell a customer that, okay, you will get 10% or 20% from your return from your investments, what you are making. Yeah. So
you almost read my mind, because responsible AI and bias in AI is one of the very important topics to talk about when it's even corporates or startups or individually any of us. But unfortunately, we don't have much time to go into that deep, but this discussion will go on because we will also post this panel recording on our channels, and then we can take forward this discussion from there on responsible AI. But probably if we can have a very brief answer on how we can actually work towards responsible AI and what are the 2-3 measures that we can take towards removing bias in AI, I would really love to hear that. Yeah.
Briefly, yeah. I will try to sum it up very briefly. So first of all, there are no ethical or unethical algorithms. It's only what you use them for, yeah, what you use them for. And the bias is usually not in the algorithm, but in the data. So there are two problems. One is the intransparency of neural networks, and there are many people of trying to combine neural networks with other methods and making them more transparent so that you can make them accountable, that you can see what they are doing. And then there are also improved methods of removing biases from the data by, for instance, weighing data. So you can weigh data, you can give higher weight to certain data. So if you say, I didn't have enough women or minorities in my sample, you can help it if you want not to perpetuate this bias from the past in the future. So there are methods for doing that. There are methods, but so don't blame AI for that. It's the people who are to be blamed. Yeah, the people who are not careful enough with the data, the people who are using the wrong algorithms for the right things or the right algorithms for the wrong things. So but it's possible. Many people are working on making AI more responsible. There's lots of research being done in this line, and I'm pretty optimistic. So there's so far no obstacle where I would say, oh, this cannot be handled. Here AI will become mean or so. It's simply not there. Yeah? It's simply oversights of people. We need to work on that, and then, but also we need to build trust systems, yeah, and that's one of the big things that maybe Europe can help with. When it comes to sharing, to data, to controlling, to look at AI, to assess AI, to certify it, there needs to be trustworthy institutions and organizations and ways. It is not so much in the end the technology. Yeah? We need things like the TÜV and the DEKRA and lots of other things, lots of other organizations that in the automotive sector are doing things. We need similar things, trust systems also in AI.
Yes, wow, that was very briefly well explained. And also talking of data, we will be talking more about data and problems in data in our last panel that is on blockchain at 4:55. So you can tune into that as well and be here, don't get tired. So that is there, and thank you very much all the panelists. I think we had so much ground to cover and we kept talking about this, but we will, as I said, keep talking about this because it doesn't stop here. And I want to thank Siddharth and Nav for joining us remotely, and Faye, Dr. Hans, and Ludwig to join us here. So thank you very much for your participation.